Howdy gang, Chris Angel coming at you. Here we go with another episode of Marketing for the Rest of Us. By the way, thank you for all the feedback you guys have been giving me. You guys have given me great feedback in private messages. You guys have also been very proactive in interacting with me in the post. So liking, commenting, sharing. I appreciate all of that. Not only does it feel good on this side because there's like, oh, it's not crickets out there, right? But it actually creates a relationship between you and I as you do that. So thank you for your interest and let's keep building the relationship, yes? So feel free to comment, like, share with me here, yeah? Okay, and listen, I'm always open to the aha moments you have. I'm always open to feedback, like what are you learning, what are you getting? So thank you for that as well. Okay, let's talk about this. I wanna talk about how do we create content that goes beyond us. This thought actually came out of a call I was having today with somebody who was looking at our agency for help with creating their own podcast and their show and their content and all that. And the question was like, well, where do you see, this is what they asked us, like, where do you see our show being able to go to? And it was cool because I started to think about this person has such huge vision and a huge heart for just wanting to give people hope through her message. Like she has a message that really brings hope. And she has a global reach, like she can already reach other countries. And so what occurred for me, what I saw was she has the opportunity with her content with her show to create it in such a way that it benefits people in countries, towns, villages around the world, that they not only can they be inspired by it, but they could actually use the content with each other, right? So it's not just, hey, let's create a marketing message that makes my services sound good and it's educational to you, but it's actually educational to you in your whole village or you in your whole country. I mean, doesn't that just blow your mind if you think about the power of content? That it becomes that if we, the creators of the content, created it in such a way that we were doing it on purpose so that people could continue to use it. So that's setting it up. Now let me give you sort of the notes of it all here, right? So let's start with, I want to start with the problem. Let's frame this with the problem. So the first problem is that most people's content or their marketing is for them and about them, right? The second problem is that most content that we create in the world is disposable. Like we posted today and tomorrow it's gone. It's like evaporated. It's as if it's disposable. It's as if you threw it away, right? You took all that effort, you put all that heart into it, and tomorrow it's gone. It's disposable. The third problem that I think content has is that it's limited in its objective. Like when we create marketing or content, we're not thinking big enough about how this content can be used. We're very limited in our thinking about what this content is for. Most people will be like, okay, this content is to create business for me. It's to create relationship for business. If you can get a little bit beyond that, you might be like, okay, this is for relationship and networking with people and helping people. But even that in some ways is limited in its scope, right? So I'm going to unpack that for you in a minute here with some ideas. So here's okay, good. So let me give you the possibilities with each of those problems. So the possibility on the other side of the problem called most content is for you and about you. The possibility, guys, is that your content could actually be for them. Like, and I don't mean for them as in like for them to hear, but for them to use. Right? Go back to the example I just said about like a country or a village, being able to take your content and share it with each other, to have discussion around it, to talk about it, right? We have a client in our agency, a different client who works with corporations and their teams in workplace collaboration. And so as we've been working through her show and her strategy and her content, I'm like, look, go ask the HR people, go ask the decision makers, the CEOs, what their challenges are, and go create content for them that they can be sharing with their team. right? Like, hey team, here is, our clients, they wouldn't say our client, it's my client, right? Here is the podcast we want you to listen to this week. We're going to talk about it on Friday's meeting. See, if you could create content in such a way that it was for them to use with their people to further their objectives and their missions and their targets, your content now has purpose beyond just them hiring you or working with you, right? In other words, people start looking forward to your content because it makes their life easier and better. Okay, here's the next possibility, right? In response to that content is disposable, the possibility is that your content could actually be reusable. Think about that. We're in a world where most content evaporates the next day, right? It gets buried and pushed down through a timeline. What would happen if your content was actually reusable? Right? Like people came back to it time and again. They're like, hey, like I just kind of gave you an example of that, right? Like a discussion group, a book club, a mom's group, a dad's group, a church group, a fitness group. I mean, look, when you start to think about it this way, and actually notice that I said group, like if you can actually reverse engineer it in such a way that you're thinking of the group as in the tribe of people who this content would benefit, then you're actually putting your content in a more shareable place because you're creating it for a group. It's reusable with a group. Okay, here's the third possibility. In response to the problem of that content, most content is limited in its objective. The possibility, guys, is that your content could be expanded in its possibilities. I love the idea that, like, let's just, I'm just brainstorming with you here, but find a cause that touches your heart, that moves your soul, and begin to think about how could you create content for that cause, right? So, for example, like I said, I'm spitballing here. There was a nonprofit in Spokane here that I had supported last year called Women Helping Women. Every year they have a luncheon, and I haven't done this, but I could. Now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm giving it straight to you from where I'm at, right? What they do is they basically help women who are in hard times, whether it's through trade skills or other ways, financial means, education, usually around education, but there are other things they do, I think. So what if I interview people in that community or in that nonprofit who have perspective and have advice for other women in that position, right? So now I have content that can actually go out in its possibilities. It can actually go out and not only be helpful to the Spokane area and women wanting to figure out how do I get out of the situation I'm in, but also other nonprofits now across the country could see this as an example, this type of content as an example. I could actually go network this content with other nonprofits that help women around the country and be like, hey, we're doing an episode. Check this out. I think that it would also be helpful for the women that you help, right? So start to think about expanded possibilities for your content. How else could you use your content besides it just being about your topic? Who else could use it, right? All right. So those are the problems and the possibilities, but now I want to move into the principles here, right? There's a couple principles at play in the background. So the first is thinking about content marketing this way requires that you come from a place of generosity, right? That it's not just about people learning about your business and hiring you, but that you're trying to think, how do I actually use my time, my effort, and my energy for the good of other people? That is generosity, right? The second principle at play in the background here is that your content can have utility. There was a book several years ago now called Utility, Youtility, from Jay Baer. Great book. Love this book. And it just really shifted something for me as I think about marketing, and in the book, he has a ton of case studies, but one of the things he looked at was, how are these companies being helpful to people in the community, even if how they're being helpful is not directly related to what they sell, right? So he had one example in there about a hotel. I can't remember. It was some, big name hotel chain. You would know if I said it. Could have been Hilton, could have been Marriott. I don't know. And they were, in this case study, they were looking at Twitter in a geographic area, right? For just what people were saying about the area, like, where do I go for dinner? And so this hotel chain had social media managers who actually came on and gave advice for what they could do in the city. Now, they didn't say like, and by the way, you can stay at our hotel tonight. There was no call to action to stay at their hotel. It was simply being helpful, right? In response to what people were asking for or what people were looking for. So that is utility. How can your content have utility? How can you add more usefulness to the content that you are creating? Okay? That is a principle in the background of what we're doing here, is utility. Okay, here's the third principle for content like this, and it is to educate, right? People will say a lot of times, like in content marketing, there are a couple things we're after. We're either after entertainment or we're after education, for the most part. I mean, it's really those two. There's a third one I can't really think of right now. But those are the two big ones, education and entertainment. Now, unless you're an entertainer, I'm not an entertainer. Unless you're an entertainer, you're stuck with education. So one of the principles here in content is that it's education. This is why taking a picture of your cat, taking a picture of your lunch, that's probably more towards the entertainment side of things. For cat lovers, people like the cat thing, right? That's entertainment for them. It's not education for them, but it is entertainment, maybe. Taking a picture of your lunch, that might be entertainment if people are interested in like your nutrition tips, or, I mean, it's not even a tip if it's just your lunch. But sometimes people are foodies and they're like, ooh, look what you have for lunch. That's cool. Okay, fine, great. But for most of us, our content is going to be more useful, have more possibilities attached to it, be reusable if it has education embedded in it, okay? All right, and here's the fourth principle at play, and that is to create content, right, that is an asset. Create content that's an asset, meaning there's residual value to it. The principle is that your content isn't just disposable and I'm supposed to check a box today that I posted, but that I'm actually creating something that is helpful, that adds value to the world. I remember years ago, I don't know if it's probably a podcast. I was listening to Pat Flynn's podcast, Smart Passive Income. And he was way down the line, right, in terms of where I was at in my own content marketing. And he was just saying, like, look, create content that makes the world a better place. Don't just create content to create content, but create content that makes the space better. That's an asset, right? That is, to me, that's an asset. So one of the principles in the background of this is that I'm talking about creating marketing and content that actually makes something better. That would be an asset, okay? All right. Let me dive into some strategy, and I'm gonna let you go with one action item. So there's three pieces to this strategy here. The first is that I want you to pull other people into your content. Pull other people into your content, whether you're asking them what their questions are, their frustrations are. If it's a corporation, like I said with our client, who is going and asking HR directors, like, hey, what are some of the challenges you're facing right now? And then she comes back and creates a show specific to answering those challenges so that that HR person can share it with their teams, right? That is pulling somebody into your content. Another way to pull people into your content would be interviewing them. Interview them on your show, in your content, right? So, and I love that one because people love what they help create. So if you're pulling people into your content, in some way, you're giving them ownership of your show, of your content. And people love what they help create. Yeah? Okay, here's strategy number 2. I want you to reverse engineer content that is shareable. So like I said with the HR example, start to go find, look, you can be strategic with this, right? Who are you trying to serve? Who are the clients that you are trying to attract? But be strategic then in how you're thinking about content that not only has them get to know you and trust you to want to hire you or work with you, but content that would be useful for them to use in their own spheres of influence, right? If you're a mortgage person and one of the primary ways that you find business is through real estate agent partners, then what kind of content could you create in a show that real estate agents could use for buyers and sellers, right? For their spheres of influence. That's a great example of reverse engineering content that is shareable. Other people will then share your content because it means they don't have to create it. Most people don't want to create their own content. They just don't. Like, it's a lot of work and it's a lot to manage. So create content that they can use. Now, the good news is you're in it. But if you do it in a way that isn't spammy or just all about your brand, but you're actually creating content that is for them to use, then it makes their life easier. It's helpful for the other people, right? Okay, you get the idea. So that's strategy number 2. Here's strategy number 3. Start to network with visionaries. Start to network with people who have vision for something. I'm not saying that they have to be influencers. I'm not saying they have to have 30,000 fans, but they have vision for something, okay? And then what I want you to start doing with those people is creating content with them that they can use that spreads their vision, right? It actually takes their vision further. Okay? There's power in most people in this digital age think about posting content and marketing as in like, okay, well, we're going to go post on social media, and they sort of forget about the relationships that you can create through networking, right? Network your content. And this is even, in the past, I've given you episodes where I'm like, hey, from your episode, now go share that episode with people, right? Offline. Go, if you're at a networking meeting, be like, oh, I just did an episode about that. Here's a link. What I'm saying in this particular episode, though, is network your content by actually first finding somebody who has a vision for something, then create content around it. Does that then make them more likely to share your content? Yeah. We're networking your content before you even created it. Because we're being strategic. We're reverse engineering what would make it shareable. Cool. So here's the plan. I'm going to leave you with this action item. The action item is then for you to write down 5 people that you could help with your content. Who could you help? Who is a visionary? Who is up to something big in your town, in your industry, in your target market or tribe? Write down 5 names and then go approach them to help them. Say like, hey, listen, I love what you're up to. I would love to interview you for my show, or for my Facebook page or for my YouTube channel. Okay, if you haven't already created a show out of it. And book time with them and interview them, right? And tell the world about what they're up to, okay? That's the assignment. That way, gang, if you do it like that, what happens is you start to create content that goes beyond you. It goes beyond your business, and you've unleashed the possibilities for that content to get legs in the world, right? And the good news is you can sleep well at night, put your head on your pillow, knowing that all of it came from generosity. Okay? All right, gang, that's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow for another episode of Marketing for the Rest of Us. Until then, take care and get to work. See ya.